Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the second video in which we address Ridwan's fake recitation of the Quran. If you want to watch the first video, you can click on the link which appears above. And in this first video, we clearly showed without a shred of doubt that Ridwan was doing a pathetic fake acting while trying to pretend that he relies on his memory to remember the sources and the names of books. To give you a little background on what we are talking about here, Ali Dawah challenged Ridwan to recite Surah Al-Kothar, and Ridwan couldn't do it.
Okay, can you recite Surah Al-Kothar?
I'm not reciting anything.
Waste man.
I'm not reciting anything.
Then a few days later, he appeared with David Wood on a live stream and said that he is going to try to remember Surah Al-Kothar and recite it. And he did that.
Let me try right now. I don't know. I don't want to get it wrong and give them more ammunition right there. But I think it goes like Inna Ataynaka al-Kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shanika huwal abtar, or something like that.
Apparently, a friend of his approached him and told him that that was ridiculous. The challenge was on a live stream. To come and do the challenge 2 days later is ridiculous. Everyone is going to believe that you went and did some training on how to recite Surah Al-Kothar. So Ridwan figured out a very genius idea. He thought he would do a video where he pretends that he is trying to remember, and he will deliberately make mistakes in order to make it seem very authentic and convincing. Let's now watch Ridwan reciting the Quran.
And it goes, Inna Ataynaka al-Kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shanika huwal abtar.
So the first surah he recited was Surah Al-Kothar, and of course there is no way for him to act and try to pretend that he doesn't remember the full surah very well, because he has already recited it fully during his live stream with David Wood. So Ridwan couldn't do any acting here. Let's carry on.
قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كفوا أحد. Whatever.
Now tell me, here is a guy who recited the surah. He recited the full surah of Ikhlas. قل هو الله أحد. And after he recited the full surah, he said,
لم يكن له كفوا أحد. كفوا أحد. Whatever.
what was the purpose of repeating the last part and saying whatever? If you think about it, he recited the whole surah. Then why would he do that? Very simple. Because he is trying to send a message to his gullible followers that I am now trying to remember. I'm relying on my memory. The person who acts will always try to convince the people watching him that he is not acting. So he will always stress on the fact that he is trying to remember. Even when he recites the whole surah, he would say then, whatever. As if he's not sure about the last part. He didn't read it. He didn't read it or didn't do any training on it. He's just trying to remember, and then he forgot, and then he thought that he was not sure about the last part because he was relying on memory. Let's carry on.
The other one is Falaq, which is قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر من شر ما خلق من شر. I have no idea how it continues. غاسق إذا I don't know. I don't remember the rest. See, this is one of the easiest ones, and I forgot half of it already.
Now this is very strange, isn't it? I mean, the idea that you can recite Surah Al-Kothar from memory very well, and you cannot recite Surah Al-Falaq. If you were a real practicing Muslim, if you were very religious as you claimed, you would never do this mistake. But maybe you don't understand the importance of Surah Al-Falaq in the life of a religious Muslim. Unlike Surah Al-Kothar, Surah Al-Falaq is used for dhikr. I don't know how to say dhikr in English, but it's a kind of like, rituals that you repeat and recite after you complete your prayers. It's not obligatory for Muslims, but religious Muslims always do it. So we have 5 prayers a day. After each prayer there is dhikr, and one of the dhikr is repeating Surah Al-Falaq. So let's check how many times a religious person recites Surah Al-Falaq every day. After Fajr, he recites Surah Al-Falaq 3 times. After Zuhr, he recites Surah Al-Falaq 1 time. 1 time after Asr. 3 times after Maghrib. 1 time after Isha. Also before going to bed, 1 time you recite Surah Al-Falaq. And also during your morning dhikr. Once you get up, you do your morning dhikr. 3 times Surah Al-Falaq. And evening dhikr 3 times again. So a very religious person would recite Surah Al-Falaq 16 times a day. Let's be fair and say that, sometimes he will forget. So let's cut it down to 8. A religious person is going to recite Surah Al-Falaq at least 8 times a day. Notice that we didn't count how many times he's going to recite it during his prayers. Because usually these are the first 3 surah that non-Arab Muslims learn. And most of the non-Arab Muslims rely on these 3 surahs during their prayers because they are easy to remember. Some non-Arab Muslims who pray 5 times a day recite Surah Al-Falaq in every prayer. But we are not going to count this. So I would say 8 times a day. That equals 2,944 times. If Ridwan was a practicing religious Muslim for 10 years, that means he recited Surah Al-Falaq 29,000 times. Unlike Surah Al-Kothar, which is not very commonly recited by non-Arab Muslims. So I doubt that Ridwan recited Surah Al-Kothar for even 200 times. So to remember Surah Al-Kothar with confidence and to, forget Surah Al-Falaq is a mistake that you should not have done while acting, Ridwan. The last 3 surahs, Al-Ikhlas, Al-Nas, Al-Falaq, are the most remembered and memorized surah among the Muslim world. Let's carry on.
What else is there? The one about Masad Abu Lahab, an enemy of Islam, an enemy of Muhammad, who is condemned to hellfire in the Quran itself. See, I don't even remember how it starts. I don't remember that at all. I don't know.
Did you notice something? He got the name of the surah correct. Masad, Surah Al-Masad. And he couldn't remember a single verse from the surah. In fact, remembering the first part of the surah is easier than remembering the name of the surah. I personally, to be honest with you, I struggle sometimes with remembering the name of the short surahs. So I didn't realize that this surah was called Al-Masad until he said it. I need someone to remind me of the name of the surah. I call it Surah Abu Lahab or Surah Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab. So remembering the first part of the surah is easier for Muslims than remembering sometimes. I'm talking about the short surahs. We know everyone knows that Surah Al-Ikhlas is Surah Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. Not everyone knows that it's called Al-Ikhlas. Like Surah Qul A'udhu Birabbil Falaq. Not everyone knows that it's Al-Falaq. Many people know, but I'm saying that if you don't pay attention and you are used to reciting the surah, you don't necessarily remember the name. So to remember the name, but to forget at least the first verse of the surah, Tabbat Yada Abi Lahabin wa Tab. Believe it or not, that remembering this part is easier than remembering the name of the surahs. Muslims understand what I'm talking about here. Usually you go and you just recite the short surahs, and just because you always recite them, you know them by the first part. You don't necessarily remember the surah. But people who do cheap acting don't pay attention to these details because they don't know these details. They were never practicing Muslims. I told you, when you do cheap acting, you're going to do mistakes that you yourself don't realize because you're trying to be something that you were not. You were never a practicing Muslim. So you will never know that Surah Al-Falaq is easier to remember than Surah Al-Kothar. You will never know that remembering the first part of the short surahs is easier than remembering the name of the surahs. Okay, let's carry on watching.
About the Quraysh. Geez, I really don't remember. I don't even remember what the others are. What? I don't know.
So again here he remembers the name of the surah, but he can't get the first part. And this is my question. Like, these two surahs, the last two surahs we have just seen him reciting, like, he didn't remember anything at all. He didn't remember the first part. He didn't recite anything. So why are they there in the video? What's the point? Like, you're supposed to show us the surahs that you remember. You don't remember these two surahs, and this is not a live stream. So why didn't you remove this part from the video? And it's quite obvious, because he's trying to send a message that I'm trying to remember from memory, and it's okay if I forget. It's okay. See, I don't know. I don't remember even any verse from this surah. It's very cheap and pathetic. So I think this much is enough for us to confirm that Ridwan was just, doing this fake acting, pretending to be remembering surah in order to deceive his gullible fans. And let me tell you, he's going to deceive them, not because he's smart, not because his acting was great, but because they are morons. They don't know how to think for themselves. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.